It's just about. Okay, so we are live. Dear listeners, dear fans and friends, welcome to IDAGIO Live. Tonight, I'm Mikael Rudolfsson from Klangforum Wien. It's a Vienna-based ensemble for contemporary music. And we have the opportunity to chat over this medium with persons we collaborate with. And there are some artistic relationships that are very special. And I think I speak for the whole ensemble when I say that tonight's guest, conductor and composer Emilio Pomàrico, is a very special collaborator for us. Welcome, Emilio, to this chat.
Hello to everybody. Hi, Mikael. What a pleasure.
Oh, it's wonderful to see you. And since this is the only way to meet right now, I'm very happy that we're doing this conversation and to ask you some questions that I really had inside me for a long time. And immediately when I got this question to speak to you,
very good.
I was considering what will I ask Emilio and what makes playing with you so special. I'm a musician, I'm a trombone player, you're a conductor, and we have performed many times together on stage. And I always think there is a special sense to the interpretation. I think you always go beyond what's written in the score or deeper into what's written in the score. And I think that is something very interesting because I think it's independent of genre, independent of whatever setting, chamber music, solo, big orchestra. So I want to just begin with a question, Emilio. What is interpretation?
From my personal point of view, of course, interpretation is a kind of open meaning word. It is not that strict. Interpretation means, from my point of view, the capability of understanding what the relation among elements in a given context are. This is very important to me. So the interpretation is just not a kind of arbitrary choosing in given musical situation, but just finding the best possible putting in relation of all the elements that are what we call a composition.
So when you say elements, you mean rhythm, you mean harmony, tonality or not tonality, or what are these elements?
All the layers, all the normal layers are composing a score, from going from Pachelbel to Helmut Lachenmann. There are very, very, very recognizable all those elements that the composer is putting together to achieve his artistic goal, and an interpreter has to be so good to recognize them and to put them in relation. Of course, all those layers are fixed on paper, but we know that everything you are going to write to fix on paper is a kind of lie in a way, because it cannot be the truth in between.
It's just the least bad option to get it over to the musician, I think. It's just a way, right?
Yeah, of course. So the interpreter is to understand, to learn the piece, to have a look to it. My personal path is to start having a global perception of the piece, turning pages, slowly reading, having an idea of how the flux of events is, and trying to understand what are the moments of real connection. In every score, in every musical experience, for me, there is a principle, a main principle, which is the principle of directionality.
Okay.
We start from some given point, we have to arrive at the end of the piece. In between these two limits, there is all the space we need to build up something that can be enjoyable, can be understandable. I say that in the most problematic way, and also in the most obvious direct way. But when you are capable to make things clear, transparent, almost necessary, then you achieve a good amount of possibility to make your job something of understandable for the listener.
It's very interesting to me. I like listening to these thoughts of yours. I'm curious because you, as a conductor, you get the score. Sometimes it's never performed before. In our case, as Klangforum, it's usually never performed before. And you want to get this direction. You want to structure it in a way that it makes sense to a listener. Can you have the interpretation done before you begin working with us? Or is that something that also is happening very much in the context of the rehearsals?
Of course, when you are going through a score, when you are reading the score, when you are learning score, I do work quite hard. I take a lot of time for learning my scores. Sometimes our composers, by composers, I already know the music and the aesthetic. Sometimes it's our composer unknown to me, so I have to discover a kind of aesthetical key to go into their music. And that's obvious. You must develop your internal hearing quite a lot. When you see the score, you start listening, you say, aha, the strings like that, the percussion, this is the piano, the trombone is doing these things. What does it mean, this trombone playing fortissimo when all the others one are in a cluster playing pianissimo? And all this kind of, you put yourself all these kind of questions. And of course, the moment of revelation is the moment in which all those informations, all those kind of putting in relations became music. And there we discover what the writing, what the écriture is just a medium. It is not the final truth. We know that during the rehearsals, we understand that, aha, there is fortissimo. Is that by opposition, or is that to be complementary to this other event? And there you start taking decisions, and you are also dealing with your musicians, no? And you say, Mikael, that can be just a bit more clear, can be a bit more dark, softer, louder. No, this is too slow. Emilio, I cannot play at this tempo, but this is the tempo of the composer. And I say, okay, doesn't work. We have to find a different point of departure. No, so we lower the tempi because the tempi are not really functional. And there we establish new relation, new perspective. And the music, as time is passing during the rehearsals, is telling us much more, is giving us much more informations, important informations, the capital ones that are not in the score. This is the processes of a good, let me use this obvious word, a good interpretation. You cannot pretend to open a score and to say, the composer, he wrote mezzo forte, I will do mezzo forte. 60 to the quarter has to be 60 to the quarter. This is a kind of reading that it is not interesting for anyone. Music is a different happening, is something that happens right in the moment we are concerned with, not before, not later.
And we have had many moments like this. I think it happens very often in a rehearsal. Really, the tempo is that he is writing is too high. It's not possible to get this mass of sound moving in this way, or the transparency is not happening the way to explain the piece. Then I would like to ask you, what do you do when you get the score first? Like very briefly, how do you structure it? How do you what do you write in it? Do you open it and read it like a book? What's the process happening?
The process is very simple from my point of view. I know absolutely well that I need time to get into the score. So it's are several readings at the beginning just to get the global idea of the piece. And then I go deeper and deeper and deeper in all those details, finding sometimes errors, and many composers are asking, how did you find this error? I didn't, because I guess it's very important to master not the individual technique, because that would be almost impossible. Every single composer, he has his own vocabulary, his own
and sometimes own notation.
Also. Absolutely, yes. But there is the possibility going deeper and deeper and deeper, crossing all the layer of complexity to understand how does it work, and then what the relations are, what the proceedings are. Sometimes when you discover that there are several grisees, for instance, the beginning of the Quatre Chants, this magnificent lamento at the very beginning, there are 4 layers overlapped and very carefully pushed into the tempo. And there is, so the magic is when you are able to understand all the different speed and all the different intensities, how it's important to put on the same level a cello pizzicato with the grosse Trommel, how do you say in English?
A beat, a hit.
A bass drum, no? And being exactly in the same position in the 4 different processes, so you know that you have to make your musicians aware about the timbric, no? The cello, the pizzicato has to sound imitating the bass drum, and at the opposite, the bass drum using a mallet to get the most possible similarity.
And then you hear the piece also as a musician. You can study it, of course, you can have heard recordings of it, and then you sit in the context. And we did once in Quatre Chants, we changed the mute together. You asked me to put a soft piece of fabric around the mute, and we got this euphonium part I was playing to very, very soft level, and suddenly you hear the whole transparency, you hear what the composer thought. I think that's, for me, always a revealing moment when you understand the texture, understand the piece, and it settles somehow.
Yeah, that what you are saying is absolutely true. In the beginning, the texture of the euphonium is problematic there, because when the euphonium can play pianissimo, but it will be always on top of the others, because we have clarinets, we have saxophones, we have instruments that can play really pianissimo. And there was magnificent what you did, what you were able to achieve when you put the level, the dynamical level at the same, at the most fruitful relation. And then immediately the music became so clear, so absolutely true.
Yeah.
It's a matter of truth. Yeah.
Sometimes I wish the audience could be there for the rehearsal to see this happen, to hear these moments, because in a way they are nicer than the concert, in a way, because it's like the piece is like a blossom that opens up, and you see finally all the layers, all the colors, everything it is, and it just works.
This is, sorry, I interrupt you just a second. What you are saying, blossoming, is a very important way to think about music. Every performance is just a given moment in a process of blossoming that can carry on even after a performance. and what we do when we play again and again and again the same piece. And Klangforum for this is special because we always got the possibility to play again and again as the same piece. I did Quatre Chants with Klangforum at least 4 or 5 times, and every time is different because we carry on, we develop, we are able to find even more details that makes this music the great music it is.
Yeah. It's wonderful. We're talking about Pierre Risset. He's dead and he never got to hear his Quatre Chants, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But
Very
we're dealing
sad.
with very many living composers. And I wanted to ask you, because I'm thinking very much about this division in music that is happening that I'm not such a big fan of. We talk about the new music and the old music, and we make a cut in between. We separate them, and you feel like half a human being or half a musician. You have to choose. People ask me, "Are you a specialist in new music?" And I don't want to see myself as a specialist in new music. I think neither do you. And
not at all, not at all. Yeah, the question.
I mean, there was a program when this was the festival in Cologne, Aperghis, I think. You were conducting a Bruckner symphony alongside the Aperghis piece with the orchestra.
Yeah.
And can you just, if it's possible, can you compare what kind of elements are universal in interpretation or in music even, if you want to go that broad? Maybe a Bruckner symphony has more to do with Georges Aperghis than we think. The elements similar, the fundamentals similar.
I would say that the roots are the same. A different proceeding, of course, different goals, different aesthetic, different technique, but at the end we have something starting and ending via the sounds, via an orchestra, and there are so many common elements. At the same time, such a kind of different quality of perception, of aesthetical appreciation, because when you hear what happens in the world of Aperghis with this kind of breaking situation, is a kind of collage, no? Collage.
And very theatrical.
Absolutely incredibly theatrical.
Musical theater. Even if it's not a musical theater piece, it's always theater to me, in the best sense of the word.
Absolutely. But with Bruckner is absolutely the same thing. Of course, the matter of formal matter is a bit different, but not that much difference. I do repeat, an orchestra is absolutely enjoying this kind of huge distance there is between these two musical words. The problem for the interpreters, not the problem, the duty for the interpreters is to find the right way of make things working, their relation properly, correctly, and developing it into the big bow of the entire work.
It's just nice listening to you, and I really share your opinions on this. And I think we've experienced very much the same. You from the front as a conductor, me as a musician in an ensemble. Communication, also when we talk more about rehearsing maybe and getting to the interpretation. You have had the score for a while, you have studied it. Now you need to communicate with the musicians. And I have a friend of mine, he always says, to talk about music, it's like dancing about architecture. So what are your means and possibilities as a conductor? That must be one of the main challenges. How do I communicate my interpretation, my vision in the very small amount of time sometimes to get a result? What means do you use?
My goal when I work and a score for a performance is to make myself free of the score as much as possible. That is to say that you have to work enough time to to make possible the entire work to habit your inside, your hearing. And when this happens, then you know how to lead your musicians. This is not good, this is too loud, this is not enough, doesn't work, the balance here is not correct, we need more tuba, less first trombone, don't let the first trumpet be too on top of everything. You know that I have some topics when we rehearse together to avoid the common places of sometimes an orchestration that it is not that committed with the difficulties in making some instruments playing together, and this is my goal. And communication is always a communication in the meaning of having a goal and making this goal evident for who's playing. When you have the huge string choir playing together and in given moments, and you know that the first violins, they try to be always on top of the situation. And you know that you have to ask, no, listen to the second violin, please. Let's play into the octave of the second violin. Let's the viola be a bit more evident. The double bass is more important than the cello, and so on and so on and so on. Of course, when we play, when we do this kind of work with an ensemble of individual musicians, it's a bit different, but the principles are the same, are not that different. There is the big advantage that you are dealing with musicians, with so skilled musicians, so capable technically and musically speaking, that you can get very incredible results. Today we can play the contemporary music in between commas of 30 years ago, 40 years ago, in such a different way. Our goal now is to take this half a century we have at our back and to make it listened anew, performed completely on new technical and understanding basis. That
I think this is really something I would also like to stress, to perform the same pieces of the new contemporary repertoire, to really give birth to them again and again and again and go deeper, because very fast we get into this, it's the first performance and then it's a new piece. No, I think we need to carry on the masterpieces, which is our duty, which happens with some pieces. I had to give some listening tips for all the listeners now for IDAGIO, so I was checking which recordings are available with Klangforum and with you, and I chose Georges Aperghis' Situation and Enno Poppe's Speicher, because I think these two are also pieces that very much define our work together, and also they really do deserve to be played again and again in 10 years, and maybe in 50 years, maybe even in 100 years. What is your take on that, to our duty to perform pieces again and take responsible for a new standard repertoire?
Yes, of course. But my main preoccupation at the moment that I'm sharing with all the artistic advisors of ensembles, but also mainly with the orchestras, because the drama is there. Orchestras are like museums today, because they are performing the same repertoire blocked since 50 years, not changing almost anymore. Some orchestras, they do say, yes, every year we do one piece of contemporary music, a new commission. This is ridiculous. This is just an act of bad conscience. I have to say that I have a strong, powerful need and desire to establish an historical perspective. What happened at the beginning of the 20th century was such a revolution in the musical language that was a shock at the very beginning of the century, then established itself for the next 30, 40 years. And then after the Second World War was an explosion, because everybody understood that this word, the word that was coming from all the disaster of this huge, terrible world war, we need to do something. We need to change something. We need to think and compose a different music. And overall, in the 50s and in the 60s, the roaring years of the avant-garde, there we have a huge amount of pieces that were performed sometimes just once with, let me say that, very bad performances, because musicians weren't that good, because they weren't not at all interested. There are the good conditions to can play a totally new music. Now, today, we can do that. We need to do that. We need to establish an awareness of our recent and climate past, because we are talking already of 60, 70 years ago. And when we can play a piece of these times, and we can play, are able to play it. I'm wondering, for instance, that I did many performances of the Jean Barraquet Concerto, which is an extraordinary piece, a marvelous piece, and that needs such a competence from the performers, from the players, not last but not least by the conductor. No, it's mastering the different tempo layers and so on. Well, I guess we have a big challenge in establishing the possibility for the young composers to know all what we have behind us, just not to repeat, to get into a music that, of course, everybody understands that we need an audience. Sometimes some young composers, they are a bit too much available to make happy their audience, without understanding that we need new things to think about, that we need new things to hearing and to push ourselves into the future. Music is not just spending time for enjoying something that you know. It's for that reason that the opera houses and the concert houses, they need to do something important. Luckily, here and there, this is happening now, but from my point of view, not enough. The specialism, the totem of technique and technology today is making many, I don't know how to say that in English, sorry, this is not that good, but I guess we must be so capable to keep our humanistic approach to the phenomenon of music. If we fall down into any kind of technicism, we are losing the possibility to understand the incredible power that music brings in our lives.
That is so beautiful. Emilio, I can just tell you how much I like this chat, and we're almost at half an hour, which is our time. So if there's anything more you want to add now to our listeners, I would just love to have this as the last words, because I think this credo about music can maybe work as a good cantus firmus after this whole crazy time is over and we get to play again, which looks like it's a bit unofficial, but it looks like we're going to meet very soon to be able to play again at the festival. And that's something that makes me happy, and something that has made me happy in the last week to know about this. And so the trumpet will sound, and all the other instruments as well, very soon. And we will get to work on new pieces and old pieces. And I will be enriched by this conversation, by these ideas, and I will take this with me. There are two pieces, as I said, in the catalog. You can find them in the link, IDAGIO link, with me and Emilio Pomàrico. We now make 1 week of break, and then we return on Wednesday, the 10th of June. Then it's my colleague, Anders Nyquist. He will interview Bas Wiegers, also conductor. And now I just would like to thank you heartfully for this conversation about important matters, about music, about going deeper into the scores, about what is it all about, and let's keep the music flowing and the conversation going.
Sure. Thank you to you.
Thank you so much,
Mikael.
Emilio, and see you soon.
Yes.